Good evening, happy Thursday, wherever you're listening to us from. Welcome to Tapes to Flag podcast. Delighted to be joined as always by Dylan, and we've got a very special guest this evening in young Ben Trigger. How are we doing, gents?
Yeah, not too bad, man.
I'll go first. Okay, I'll go second. I'm good. I'm good. Thank you guys for having me on. I'm excited to obviously get underway.
So, it's pretty safe to say 2025 didn't go to plan as a whole, but how would you sort of sum up your season from last year?
Overall, realistically, I thought it was all right. Championship-wise, improved my average, which is always the goal. Tried to hit a bit of consistency, which it came and went, as it does in Speedway. On the National League front, obviously doubling up into the National League with Plymouth and obviously with Leicester. My goal in both of them was obviously improve averages. Obviously, I had Cooper at Leicester and I had Joe in Plymouth that I had to. Well, I tried to top, to get the number one place. I didn't get it, but obviously you've got two strong riders there. But obviously the average did improve. But yeah, positives were made all over, and there were times where people wrote me off, and I came back and I showed them that you don't write me off. But yeah, as a whole, I didn't want to get cut short, my championship. But then again, that's just Speedway for you, and obviously just had to deal with it and move on.
And you mentioned there about getting cut from the championship. How was that process for you, and how does that impact you as well, going back when you're still racing the National League team for last season?
Yeah, definitely. As I spoke to Peter Oakes, not too long ago. That's when I was still planning on, not riding in 2026. I spoke to Peter and I said, the same as I'll say to you guys, it was 5 or 6 meetings, do you know what I mean? After every meeting it was debating, is this my last meeting? And it was a conversation that me and Dad would have on the way back from meetings. Because there's so many rumours flying around, and I think both of you will know, and obviously people in and around Speedo will know that rumours don't really move quietly, and they do move very quickly. So obviously there were rumours flying around that someone was getting dropped. At the time we didn't know who it was. Being a 3-pointer at the bottom of the table of the team, you don't think you're going to be the one dropped. You think it's going to be a second string, someone whose average might have slipped or someone who's not performing. But yeah, obviously I had that in the back of my mind for meetings, after meetings, before meetings, and I had to put extra pressure on myself, which as a speeder rider, you try not to put pressure on yourself. Obviously, the more fun you have, the better you'll go. So it was a case of obviously trying to push that to the back of my mind and move on, and then had the call while I was out in Torren at training camp doing the PG extra league camp. I was in a seminar with Ashley Holloway with Ash Tech when Mark called me to basically say that I was no longer part of the team. He was making changes, which obviously he did. But then again, you try to move on, but at the same time, I did slip into a hole. Obviously, you think you're losing the experience that you're riding against in the championship level. Obviously, you don't race against your Soundmasters and your Scott Nichols, in the National League. So you bet yourself riding in the championship, and obviously not having that straight away is detrimental. And obviously, you think the lack of race meetings then as well. I think in the National League last year there was 20. I'm just rough number. I think there would have been 20 meetings in the whole year. Obviously with championship, obviously it almost doubles. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, obviously I got cut short, and I tried not to let it hit me, but it did. There was a few meetings where I probably didn't score as best I could have, or my head just was in the wrong place. But towards the end of the season, I started to obviously get back into that click, and started performing well in National League, and obviously in individuals I was hitting some form as well. Obviously winning the East, part of the East meeting with Kings Lynn, and obviously riding well in the Ipswich Academy meeting as well. I was going strong in that, bar a couple of mistakes here and there, but obviously not everyone's perfect. But yeah, obviously try not to let it affect me. But I think if you ask any rider, if you get dropped mid-season, it does hit you no matter how hard you try not to let it.
Yeah, 100%. And you've mentioned as well that you wasn't intending to ride this year. What made you make that U-turn and sign for Middlesbrough in the National League this year?
It was kind of a case of that there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and it was just one of those where, like, obviously because my form wasn't great, and I was kind of in this hole. I was quite down, and it'd be a case of, like, if I didn't have a good meeting, I'd be harsh on myself, which I think most speedway riders are. But yeah, I mean, obviously there was a few things. I was like, okay, like I can knuckle down and work. I can, I'm an apprentice mechanic as well. If I can get my qualifications, then I'm absolutely sorted. You know what I mean? I can work and do speedway, which I think a lot of people do nowadays. Try and work at the same time. So I just thought I'd knuckle down. Obviously got a few things going on elsewhere. Which are public knowledge. Obviously, some aren't, some are. But yeah, I mean, it was the case of Jamie Swells kind of talking to us, talking to me and my dad. Kind of saying that they've got a team place open. My average fits, and basically I'd be the last piece of the puzzle if I accepted. And just kind of talking to Jamie. We came to a deal, and I was like, okay, so I'll ride National League. I'll keep one foot in it. I maybe distancing completely away isn't a great idea, but if I can keep my name floating around, then I don't see why I wouldn't be able to obviously come back in 2027 back into the Championship full time.
And to be fair, that was almost bringing into my next question, because I remember you did a guest booking at Scunny towards the end of last year, and I thought it was brilliant. So, when you got signed to the Tigers, is the goal for maybe even this season coming up, to get into a Championship spot?
I mean, it's on the cards. I'm not going to say yeah, but I'm also not going to say no. It's just a case of, obviously, if the time is right for me. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if I can try and hit form, then I'll be okay. Obviously, I made a few good guest bookings after I got dropped. Notably, I had a good one up in Berwick, which I got a lot of praise for. And obviously, yeah, like you said, obviously I've guested for Scunny as well. But then again, like, even just talking to team managers after I got dropped from Plymouth, it was a case of other team managers and other teams couldn't understand why. In all honesty, I couldn't fully know why either. I try not to question it. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, they made the decision that they wanted to. But yeah, obviously, even to be having team managers saying we don't understand it, like, we wouldn't do that. Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, so team managers are potentially interested. It's not like, oh well, yeah, fair enough. Like, Ben was lacking. So I'm not going to write off Championship this year. Obviously, I'd like to think my name is somewhat in the pile of reserves that are up and coming. But then again, if I can keep my name thereabouts and beat the people that I need to be doing, then obviously getting into a Championship spot and developing even further, hopefully won't be an issue.
You mentioned about keeping your name in there as well off the back of that question. You, for the most part, last season at National League and National Trophy level was really good for you. Was it difficult to keep your name in the focus when you got riders like Cooper Russian and Will Cairns that were the talked about riders all the time, whether they did well or whether they didn't? You kind of went under the radar. Did that make it almost an extra challenge?
Yes and no. Obviously, for the sakes of Will and Coops, obviously they get the recognition. If Cooper's riding a meeting or if Will's riding a meeting, they are like the poster boys, if that makes sense. And they've done the work. Do you know what I mean? They deserve to be there. But at the same time, it's kind of like a pressure off of me. I'll go to the Pride of the East meeting at Kings Lynn. You had Coops was the main guy. He's growing up Kings Lynn. He was the mascot. Obviously, National League. He's strong there. And then obviously you had the likes of Will, obviously in the mix, and it's like, okay, so these two are the favourites. I came in. No one had me down to win it. Do you know what I mean? If someone did, the odds were probably pretty good if it was in the bookies. But yeah, obviously I came in as kind of an underdog, and obviously, I didn't really perform that well in the qualifiers. I didn't think. Had a good semi, and then obviously made it work in the final. But obviously, it's one of those where you've still got your name thereabouts. It's just obviously Will and Cooper, riders like that. They do have their names ahead of me, but that's because they're up and coming, they're younger than me, and they're the hot prospects. Which, like I said, they deserve to be there. It's not that they haven't bought their way in. Do you know what I mean? It is pure talent. And obviously you can see that on the bike. So I mean, if anything, it's kind of like a one-up when I beat them. It's like, yeah, I can beat you. I won't write myself off. Do you know what I mean? I'll put up a fight, and obviously if I do beat them, it's like I can do it. Don't write me off. Do you know what I mean?
Mm. And you talk about them being the up-and-coming prospects, and there are a few of those sort of riders coming around now. But as you say, with the Pride of the East meeting, do you think the experience that you've got was one of the things that got you over the line in that as well?
Potentially. Obviously, Kingston's not a track I've really ridden like that. I rode. It was an amateur meeting of some sort. I think it was a dirt track event, which, funny enough, Coop's dad's ran. So I rode in that a few years ago, and then I think I rode there. Then I did a Premiership meeting. I guess it's for Oxford, and then I did a National League meeting that year, or the same year as obviously, or last year. So I did all that. So I didn't really go in with a good track knowledge as such. Didn't really know the setup, and it was the first meeting where I hadn't actually had my dad with me. Obviously, growing up, your dad is your mechanic and your driver, and I wasn't. Well, he wasn't with me. He was out on holiday enjoying the sun. I stayed home because I obviously had that meeting. I think I had. There might have been something else I had that week. I think I had Plymouth on the Saturday. So I stayed home, did a bit of decorating for him, but the main thing was Speedway. But yeah, see, it was kind of a meeting where I was like, in a way, I was probably even more written off because I was out of my comfort zone. I didn't have the pit crew I was normally with. I was driving pretty much everywhere myself. I drafted in Ryan McKenzie. Obviously known him for a few years. Picked him up from Leicester. Drove to Kings Lynn, and then obviously basically just made steady changes through the heats. Changing setups when I needed to. And I remember being sat in the pits. After the semi, just obviously like waiting to go out for the final. Helmets were on, goggles were on, and I was sat at the back. So I had Dale Woods, Cooper, and Will. Obviously, they were all in the final. They were all ahead of me, and I was just kind of sat in the pits, head down, trying to psych myself up, like trying to create a plan in my head. And obviously got to the start line. green lights, tapes, dropped my clutch, made an alright start. Didn't I didn't hit the front straight away. You know, I had to use a bit of knowledge to cut back and hit the front. Obviously, I knew that I had 3 other guys who were going quite strong that night, and I knew especially Coops was going to be behind me chasing it. Obviously, he's ridden there for many years, and he's done a lot more laps than me as well. So I knew I had people on my back. I wasn't going to look back until maybe the last corner, because I was like, I'm not looking. I don't want to know what anyone is. I don't think I really breathed. I kind of held my breath, and then obviously as soon as I finished the race, crossed the line, and that's when I had a big breath, and I was like, okay, I did that. But yeah, I mean, experience-wise, although I'm older, I think we have similar experiences. If that makes sense. You know, Will and Cooper, they've done a lot more abroad. They've done a lot more Europeans. You know, they've been obviously they went 250s, and I never went 250s. I skipped that. But obviously they had SGP 3, yeah, 3 on the 250s. Obviously they've done meetings like that. Will obviously goes over to America, and obviously I know he went over to Australia this year. I've been to America. I went 2 years ago, I think. Maybe, yeah, I think it was 2 years ago. It's good fun. But obviously, during the winter, that's kind of where I knock off. You know, I like to have a bit of time off and, you know, rebuild all the bikes and, you know, kind of prepare for the new season coming ahead. But I think at the end of the day, it's just who performs in the final. Do you know what I mean? You could scrape into the semis, win the semi, and then win the final. Do you know what I mean? And you know, you see it in the GPs all the time. You know, you might not have the best qualifiers, and then you turn it around when you need to. And on that particular day, I did that, and obviously came away with the win, which I was pretty happy about.
And Speedway is a mental game as well, isn't it? Like you got released from a championship club, you still had to carry on. From a mental side of things, is it important to not burn bridges with anybody? You know, is it important to understand that it's just a numbers game and it's just business, just in case an opportunity comes along again in the future?
Yeah, of course. You know, it can be hard, obviously, when stuff like that happens to you, and obviously you, in a way, you just have to forgive and forget. At the end of the day, you know, clubs are there to win. If they don't believe you're performing, or they don't believe that you're bringing what you're expected to bring to the table, then, you know, it's within their rights to make changes that they need to. And at the end of the day, that's just one of the things you have to deal with. You know, I've said in the past before when I've done interviews, I do believe that if you're under a certain age and you're British, you know, if you're signed as a reserve, then you should stay there. You should be protected that you don't get dropped, because it's going to allow youngsters, not necessarily myself, but youngsters who are coming through to get that championship experience, but not worry about being dropped. Obviously, the only time you can get replaced is obviously if you get injured, which is that's fair enough. Do you know what I mean? But I don't think they should be dropped under performance. I know obviously teams want to win, so it'd be a first come first serve kind of draw. But like I say, you know, if you had the comfort of not knowing or not being able to be dropped, you know, then why should you worry about anything? You know, that's where you can perform, because there is no pressure on you. You know, you have riders and team managers that say, like, there's no pressure on our reserves because we've got a good team behind them. But at the same time, if you had no pressure of being dropped, then you have no pressure. The only pressure you've got is the pressure you put on yourself to put those points on the table and to bring in that money that you're earning. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like I say, like, obviously with the whole Plymouth thing, you know, I'm not burning bridges. I think obviously after I got dropped, and then I think they went for a spell of obviously bad luck and a few injuries. You know, I was fully committed, and I was ready for if Mark needed that 3-pointer, because I think it might have been Tom Spencer at the time. Obviously, when they signed, they had the 3-pointer, or there was someone in there that got injured. I was ready to be. Well, I was ready to be ready. To go for a guest booking for Plymouth. I didn't get that call, but I was always going to be ready. And if there was ever a time where they came back and asked me, do you want to ride? I don't see why I wouldn't, unless I was already obviously signed up with another team, or in talks with another team. Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
Palmer.
So, obviously, you mentioned earlier on you had 2 teams last year in a National League. If that National Trophy was a thing, or if British Speedway went to one big league plus a National League, would you consider doing both, or would you just ride for Middlesbrough only?
I consider both. It was a case of it was a last minute decision. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So obviously, depending on where teams were fixed up, I would have. Obviously, it kind of worked out with Middlesbrough. Obviously, they needed a rider, and I was still. I was all but closed off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But given that opportunity, it's not the worst thing I could do, and obviously just keep a foot in it, keep obviously bike fit, keep my name floating around. Obviously, you kind of had all those benefits pointing out. So, I mean, if there was an NDT, obviously there's a chance I would ride in it, or the one big league. I mean, looking at obviously social medias recently as well, I think. Obviously, I know it's due to teams losing money and the lack of teams, but I do think that losing the trophy has been quite detrimental to a lot of riders. I mean, for me alone, obviously this year, obviously it's by choice. Some riders it's not by choice, but there's 10 meetings in the National League this year. You've got a season that runs from March till October, and you've got 10 meetings. For young riders and obviously riders trying to develop, the National Development League, you can't develop that much in 10 meetings. Obviously with the trophy, obviously you had riders doubling up, but you also had opportunities where riders who wouldn't normally get a look into the National League, they had a chance to ride National League levels, and against the same standard of riders. And obviously come back to this year, and it's obviously we've got rid of that, and I'm like, I think that's probably detrimental to the sport. Obviously, if there's more National League clubs, there's going to be more riders coming through the ranks. There's going to be more riders, younger riders who necessarily aren't riding yet. Do you know what I mean? Kids that want to get into speedway, they have something to aim towards. Whereas at the minute, it's kind of a case of you have to be good enough at an amateur level to get noticed by a National League club, to then get 10 meetings a year to prove yourself to Championship. And the jump from Championship to National, or from National League to Championship is huge. Do you know what I mean? And you do see that. You if you look at the National League number ones, they could dominate in the National League and get, I don't know, 15-point maxes. Obviously 5 ride max, and then they can go to the Championship the next day and they struggle to get 3 points. Do you know what I mean? And that's just how big the gap is. I mean, some people are against it, and to be fair, I was shocked, I'm going to say. Obviously, Kings Lynn this year, they've signed Simon Lambert. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are saying, oh, he's too old for this league, and obviously, Si is an established rider. But at the same time, obviously, I've been in the sport for a while now, and I have learnt off Si, whether that be we're at a meeting and he's mechanicking, and I've kind of like bounced off him. I know that happened at Kings Lynn. I think it was in the National League meeting we had there. He was mechanicking for Mickey Simpson, I think. He might have been there with. And I was kind of struggling, and Si was in the pits with Mickey, and obviously I asked him, and we kind of had a little chat, and I made a few set of changes based off what Si said, and obviously changed what I needed to, based off what he says. He's got a lot of knowledge on his head, and obviously he can guide you forward. But I think riders like that are gonna help a lot of people. Do you know what I mean? I mean, Kings Lynn's team are pretty strong as they are. Do you know what I mean? So I think that obviously they are probably one of the favourites to win. But yeah, I mean, for riders like Sai, and obviously you got Jake Mulford in there as well. They've been there. They've been in the Premiership. They've been around the sport for long enough to pass it on. But again, I mean, if the National League had more than 10 meetings, then I think you'd see a surge of young riders coming through. And not only that, you'd also have like an anger, do you know what I mean? Or more
like a motivation.
Obviously there's going to be more competition. Riders are going to want to beat other riders in the National League to get places for Championship, and that will only happen with more races, more meetings. Do you know what I mean?
Palmer.
And obviously, in the not too distant future, obviously you are going to become a father. How does that sort of affect your outlook with racing this year?
Obviously, that's one factor. It wasn't originally a factor; it's become a factor. But yeah, I mean, obviously at the minute it's just a case of rides until the baby pops out, I guess. And then obviously then I'll figure out what kind of happens from there. Obviously, life can throw a few curveballs here and there, and I've just got to kind of take them as they come. So at the minute, it's kind of like I'll just live every day as it comes and how it goes, and I mean, obviously, I'm going to try and be there as much as I can be for Middlesbrough. But obviously, if there's times that I can't be, obviously, you've got duties to attend to. But no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. Unfortunately, don't know what gender it is yet. But I'm sure that no matter what it is, it's gonna be a good speeder rider, or at least want to be.
So last season we noticed you had Kevlars made for your National League teams with race jackets printed on. Was that a conscious decision because you don't like wearing race jackets, or was it just to keep that professional look going?
A bit of both, really. Obviously, if I've got whole Kev's designs, I can use the whole pink and purple, which is kind of like my new brand. There's I don't think there's any speeder riders in the leagues at the minute with pink and purple. Correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, I know Pico has gone for a purple design. I think it is. But like the whole pink and purple, I don't think I've seen anyone like it. But yeah, I mean, I don't like race jackets at all. And that's just kind of like growing up. Obviously, like I've worn them growing up. Guessing I wear them. But just more so, like comfort. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at my riding style, I'm all over the shop. Realistically, there's definitely a few photos floating around, and I'm tucked under the bars. I kind of ride very low on the bike, and obviously with a race jacket, it kind of moves around, and there's been a few times where I've worn a race jacket and it's pulled my cutout, mid-race, which obviously when you're in a point scoring position, that's not exactly the nicest thing to happen. So I mean, it's just kind of like that, but also at the same time, like you said, like the professional wise, obviously it looks smart. And yeah, I mean, obviously it's just a lot comfier, and I can show off a lot more sponsors because no one gets covered up that way.
And will there be a Middlesbrough set of Kevlars this year, or will it be used the ones from last year and use them again?
I'm not sure, to be honest, yet. I'm not sure if there's been a discussion, obviously, between us as a team, whether we want Kevlar's race jacket. I'm not sure what's actually come of that yet. I'm not sure if they fully decided yet or not. Ideally, if I can have Kevlar's out, I'll have Kevlar's. But then at the same time, I probably won't get a specially designed this year. For the pure reason of that Kevlar's they're not cheap, and obviously for 10 meetings, I will do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, it depends what they decide. If they want to go like a whole race, like Oxford do. Obviously, the National League team they're all matching.
Yeah.
Obviously, most Championship clubs, I think all of them actually do it now. Obviously, where they all have teams. But I don't know. I don't really know what's happening yet. I mean, if push comes to shove and the logos are still the same, then I'll just wear my Kevlar's from 2 years ago when I rode for Middlesbrough.
And you touch on the Kevlars from then when you were guesting for Red Car. We noticed you cracked out the Red Car Kevlars from a couple of seasons back. Is that something that do you like to keep hold of old race suits from past clubs?
Yeah, 100%. I think since I started in 2018, I've got at least one set from every year. So I've got my Plymouth Kevs from 2023. I've got my Mildnall Kevs from 2023, where I had obviously the Mildnall embroidered as well. Then 2024, I've got my Red Car ones and my Middlesbrough ones. Last year, I don't have my Plymouth ones anymore. I had to give them back so they can raffle them off. I don't know if they ever sold for anything, but hopefully they did. And I kept my Centurion ones, just so obviously, I finished the season with them, and obviously they're my own personal Kevs at the same time. So, yeah, I mean, all in all, every club I've ridden for, I've got a set of Kevs for, whether old or new, because, like I said, I don't have this year's from Plymouth Championship team, but I've got the 2023 one still.
And just the last one on Kevs as well, was it weird to look at the Plymouth suit last year with like nothing on the front panel, like no sponsor, no club logo, nothing?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were confused at that, which understandable. At least you would have, you could have put the Plymouth logo on it. Do you know what I mean? But I think it was more of a, I don't know what the word is. More like they were trying to make a point, saying we need help. We need a main sponsor, which I guess, I mean, they're making an announcement on Friday, I see. So I mean, we'll see what that is. So maybe it's worked, maybe it hasn't. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs. But yeah, I mean, it did look weird. If I'm being honest. It's always a main sponsor, or if not, it's the actual logo itself on the Kevs, and the way that Kevs are changing. There was a few last year that looked really smart. I mean, I loved Red Cars last year. The dominant white in it. Obviously, when I rode it was the black and red, and this year it was more dominantly white. And I thought that looked really smart. I actually loved them. I wish I had a set myself. Maybe in the future, we'll see.
And just one last one from me. You touched on earlier about protecting young British riders. I know the first season the Rising Star came into the Premiership. It was also at the Championship and got rid of the following season. Could that be something that was brought back for maybe both reserves at Championship clubs to keep that British youngster sort of theme going through it?
I mean, yeah, 100%. Obviously, when you come into league racing, obviously you've got to be 16 to ride Premiership and Championship. I mean, you could do, if you had two reserves, you could do one under 21 rider and one under 19 rider. Do you know what I mean? So I mean, like, look at this year. You've got obviously Cooper's coming in, and he's going to be a fresh 16-year-old. You've got Ryan Ingram coming in, fresh 16-year-old. If you've got riders like that, you that could be your number 7. That's your under 19 rider, and then let's say I'm going to use Kings Lynn. Obviously, I know they're in the Premiership, but you've got your under 19 rider in Cooper, and then you've got your under 21 rider in Jody.
Yeah.
Obviously, if that was in the Championship, you've got a younger rider, but you've also got still a young rider, but an older young rider. And if that was the case, I think you'd see a lot more youth coming through, and you'd see a lot more competitiveness within the younger ranks. But not only that, obviously you'll have the riders in National League who aren't in the Championship still riding against people who are getting Championship experience. So it basically causes a knock-on effect to where all parties involved will progress because the natural progression is getting better. And the only reason I say this, obviously, if you look at Poland, I think it's their reserve has to be an under 24 Polish rider. You have to have at least one. I mean, if you had that in England, but you had two riders, not necessarily for the Premiership, but more so just the Championship to start with. If you had that in the Championship, you're bringing, if there's 7 teams, that's 14 young riders you're bringing in. And, if you look at the National League, there's 10 teams. So, 14 riders out of those 10 teams in the National League are going to get chances, and the rest will just learn from everyone else, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Palmer?
And then just one last one for me, then me all through is, have you got any targets for this year, or are you just going to go there and have a bit of fun?
In all honesty, I'm just going to go for a bit of fun. Obviously not too much fun to where I'm not trying. I'm always going to give 100%.
Yeah.
I've always been a rider that gives 100%. I'll leave everything on the track. And if you don't see that in my riding, then fair enough. But I mean, a lot of people see it. Emotions run high for me. If I feel I'm hard done by, then I'll have a few words. I try not to cause a fight. I know everyone loves to see them, but the fines aren't pretty, I've been told, so I won't. I'll try not to. But no, obviously I'll leave everything out on the track. I'm going to give 100%. And I'm just going to go for a bit of fun, enjoy it, and then when I come back full time, or if I move into the Championship, that's where I can knuckle down. But the more fun I have, the better I'm going to get, and I'll just be happy to be in around the speedway a lot, and just enjoy being on a bike.
And the final question now. I know none of us can see into the future or anything, but had you not have raced this season, do you think you would have come back, or do you think you would have slipped into a normal life with the newborn on the way and your qualification, the mechanic thing going on as well? Do you think you would have just kind of left Speedway behind and gone into a normal life, so to speak?
Ask any rider that. I think most of them will say they will definitely be returning. Mine was purely I was going to sit out a year. I was always going to come back in 2027. I want to come back not so much as a different rider, but a rider who is going to establish themselves, and someone who's not just overlooked, and someone who has, as I quote, his peers have surpassed him. I want to be someone who comes back, into championships and potentially Premiership as a rider who wants to be there, and obviously has his priorities straight.
Palmer, have you got anything else?
That's very much.
We'll wrap this up here then. Ben, massive thanks for joining us tonight and taking the time out to join us, and good luck with the new arrival and with your 2026 season as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, mate. Thank you for having me on as well.
Thank you, Will.
Thanks to everyone who's tuned in to listen to this, and again, thanks to Ben for joining us, and we'll be back